Good morning, Dawg Nation. I am Brandon Adams, and this is DawgNation Daily, the daily podcast for Georgia Bulldogs fans, presented today by Merriweather and Tharp. Man, what a day we have for you here. Obviously, some of this recapping a great night for us last night with the 2024 Chick-fil-A Dawg Bowl with Mark Richt, his family, so many of Richt's admirers. As we raised a lot of money last night, we having a small part in that. Coach Richt really the one that raising the money, us doing our part to try to help him. We're going to celebrate some of that last night, the 2024 Chick-fil-A Dawg Bowl. That means on today's show, you will hear from Kirby Smart. I got a rare opportunity to interview Kirby last night. We'll show you that live on our air. A great moment involving David Pollack. David interacting with one of the current stars for UGA, but also spending some time with DawgNation. We'll show you some of that here today, too. So if you missed it last night, we'll have some fun with that today. It was just an awesome, awesome evening. And that's not all when it comes to fun stuff on our show today. In addition to celebrating the night with Coach Richt, we'll also celebrate involving one of Coach Richt's former players. You may be aware, we mentioned this yesterday, that Terrence Edwards was announced yesterday as an SEC legend to be honored at this year's SEC championship game. We're going to get a chance to talk to Terrence about that on today's show. I'm really excited about that. In addition to that, we'll also do our day job here, too. We'll talk some regular football stuff. You're hearing some of the things right now about the Georgia defense. The Georgia fans have been craving, certainly for a lot here this year. Perhaps showing up at the exact right time. We'll tell you more about that here coming up. It is DawgNation Daily, the daily podcast for Georgia Bulldogs fans. It's presented today by Merriweather and Tharp, and it begins right now.
Today's episode of DawgNation Daily is brought to you by Merriweather and Tharp, your source for Georgia divorce. Find them online at georgiadivorceteam.com.
Presented by DawgNation.com. This is DawgNation Daily, the daily podcast for Georgia Bulldogs fans. Here's your host, Brandon Adams.
What a night for DawgNation last night, the 2024 Chick-fil-A Dawg Bowl. Us invited to be a part of a great charitable endeavor on behalf of Mark Richt as he continues to lead the way when it comes to money in pursuit of a cure eventually, better treatment for now for Parkinson's disease, Crohn's disease, the Isaacson Center from UGA, obviously really one of the research organizations at the forefront of all of this. And last night, DawgNation had a chance to be a small part of helping raise what's going to end up being like $800,000. We presented a check last night for $600,000, but we had already gone above and beyond all of that while we were on the air. And as you see there on the screen, you can donate ricksdawgbowl.com. We're going to keep that going and keep raising that money. So some of the stuff on today's show is going to be a little bit of a celebration of how much fun last night was. That means at the very end of the night, or I should say very end of the day today, I'm going to play an interview that I was able to do with David Pollack last night, and we're going to show you a really great interaction that David Pollack had with one of the stars of the moment for UGA. Like, this is one of those things where, you know, you have a chance to be a fly on the wall watching some of these interactions. We'll show you some of that later on in our show today. Also, I got a chance yesterday in the midst of everything else that was going on to get a very rare interview with Georgia coach Kirby Smart. We'll do that here coming up in a little bit. If you're watching on video, you see some of the cool stuff from last night. Just a great thing. Coach Richt was great. His wife Catherine was great. Son John and his family were all there too. Man, it was just such a great night, and I just really, really, I'm just so personally proud to have been able to be a part of it and to see everybody having a good time. What a life-affirming thing all of that was last night. Just such a good thing. We'll do more of that here coming up throughout the show. Also today, we get a chance to celebrate with one of our own. Man, we love Terrence Edwards so much, the great former dog. We're going to celebrate a really cool honor for him here coming up in a moment. Terrence also really busy these days. We don't get a chance to have him on the show necessarily every week right now the way we have for years. But Terrence is good enough to be with us today, and so we can celebrate kind of almost in person, at least live. Let's say it that way, about a really cool honor he got yesterday we talked about on the show. So we'll do that coming up in a bit too. But in the midst of all of that, we've also got our day job we got to take care of here, which is talking about what the issues of the moment as it relates to Georgia football. So before we get into any of the other stuff that I mentioned, let's also kind of handle some sort of regular business for Georgia right now. And I think one of the themes for me in the aftermath of the game against Texas, once you get past the controversial officiating and the folks, the doubters who may have been proven wrong and all those topics that we've, kind of done our due diligence to address here this week, I think the lingering storyline that Georgia fans sort of have from that game is the fact that, man, that was the Georgia defense that so many of us have been waiting to see. And it's weird to be nostalgic about something from the very recent past because we think about 2021 or 2022. That's not that long ago necessarily. It's really just almost a few months ago, if you want to think about it in those terms. Certainly only a couple of years ago. But, in terms of the level of success that Georgia was able to achieve, you kind of wonder, man, could you ever do that again? Can you replicate that? Can you just sort of keep that going? Very, very hard to be as good defensively, certainly as Georgia was, especially in 2021, but even in its championship season of 2022, just replicating that level of defensive success is going to be hard for any program to achieve. And, maybe what we saw last year from Georgia, maybe what we've seen at times here in the 2024 season from Georgia, maybe it's fair to say not quite at that national championship level. Maybe it's unfair to expect any defense to ever match, those historic heights again. But on Saturday, boy, it kind of felt like 2021 again, didn't it? It sort of felt like that. It sort of felt like that Georgia was back playing its best defense at the absolute best time, and in a way that Georgia fans certainly got very used to in those national championship seasons a couple of years ago, that it was a defensive unit capable of leading the way for a Georgia victory. And I don't mind telling you, you guys know this. We get some stuff wrong around here. What we said was, hey, I don't know that in the current landscape of college football, not just because of any kind of deficiency for Georgia, but just the nature of the sport, when you see high-scoring games in so many of these big games, we said this going into Saturday. We don't mind owning our error on this. We said this going into that game that, boy, I'm just not quite so sure you can have a defensive-minded big game anymore. It seems like, whether it be Georgia, Alabama earlier this season or Oregon, Ohio State a couple of Saturdays ago, it just seems like these big games are sort of high-scoring affairs. And so we were geared up for that to also be true this past Saturday for Georgia and Texas. And certainly Georgia had an aggressive approach offensively, making it seem like they were kind of geared up for the same thing too. But the Georgia defense really showed out. And it's been kind of nice. We've certainly highlighted people who haven't given Georgia enough credit, or like these weird haters that seem to look for every negative they can kind of spin as it relates to Georgia. Sometimes it's also nice for a moment to kind of show the other side of that and some of the praise that Georgia's getting here right now. Thought we got kind of an interesting comment as it relates to this from Greg McElroy. I think that McElroy's pretty quickly becoming one of the most prominent college football analysts right now. I think he does his homework. I think he's a pretty sharp guy overall, even if he is a former Alabama quarterback. Well, on his show this week, as transcribed by our friends at On3, McElroy kind of said the thing I think a lot of Georgia fans have been hoping to hear about their defense, the kind of thing that makes you feel good if you are a Georgia fan. This week on McElroy's own podcast, he says, the Georgia defense turned back the clock to 2021. Boy, don't you love that? As I said before, it's weird to be nostalgic about something that wasn't all that long ago, but there is a lot of 2021 nostalgia sometimes, it seems, because it was such a special season for Georgia. McElroy saying, watching Georgia on Saturday remind him of 2021. He goes on to say, as quoted by On3, they dominated. They dominated in the first half of that game. I mean, it was to the point almost when you're waiting and watching, you're like, golly, is Texas going to be able to move the ball at all? Boy, don't you love that? And we said, what was it, one of these days this week, we talked about on some of the yards per play stuff that Georgia probably has some improvement it can show to kind of get back into that National Elite category, net yards per play, the comparison between what you gain offensively, what you allow defensively, that Georgia's got some room for growth. But guess what? If Georgia keeps playing the way that Greg McElroy says he saw them playing on Saturday, then a lot of that is obviously going to take place, and that's going to be great to see. But it's also important to note that Kirby Smart, as you would typically expect him to be, even if guys like McElroy are kind of loving what he's seen from the Georgia defense and kind of comparing it to 2021, Kirby Smart, even on Saturday night, in the midst of a very big win on the road as an underdog against the number one team in the country, Kirby still drives a hard bargain here. And Kirby still says that even in the midst of that game, there's more that he wants to see from his team, kind of highlighting the back end of the defense, the secondary here, about kind of finishing those plays off. So even with Greg McElroy saying all these, kind of very kind and complimentary things with the Georgia defense, Kirby on Saturday said, I still think this group's got another level they can still achieve, putting a spotlight on the back end of the defense as he talked that way. This is what Kirby said on Saturday night.
Because of our ability to win the line of scrimmage and stop the run, we were able to play confidently, but we left 1,000 plays on the back end, guys. You got to make plays on the back end, and we're not finishing plays. That's frustrating.
So, like, talk about nostalgia. Like, this feels like Georgia football. Some guys like, hey, Greg McElroy's like, hey, this defense looked like the greatest defense of all time again. And Kirby Smart's still mad about the plays they left out there on the field. Like, this is sort of nature healing or, return to normalcy. Georgia playing at a very high level, but Kirby not being satisfied. That's kind of what we have come to expect from Georgia football. And on Saturday night, that version of Georgia was back. And for a little bit more detail on what Smart means when he says, hey, we left plays in the back end. We didn't, do as much as we could back there. We didn't finish off plays. Smart, speaking to the media on Tuesday night, talked a little bit more about his, not quite so young, but maybe in some respects inexperienced secondary as they try to grow into their own here. Smart gave us some more details about all of that.
Yeah, I mean, we've been a work in progress. I don't know if I can say how young we are, but we are new. We're relatively new. We've got 3 guys that are starting in the NFL, and anytime you have 3 guys that are starting in the NFL, that probably means they played for you at least 2 years, and those guys all did. So there's a lot of growing up that's had to do back there, and they continue to work to get better. And all you can ask your kids to do is work, compete, be competitive, be tough. And they do that, and I'm pleased with how hard they work and compete. We haven't made some plays on the ball that I think could have rewarded us, or maybe, when offenses make mistakes, we don't capitalize on that mistake, a la dropped picks. And that was my reference last week. I mean, after the game, I think some people took it to be about the offense, but my comments were about the number of drop picks we had in one game. I don't think I've ever seen anything like that. And that's where you have to hurt teams. You have to turn those into turnovers, and when you don't, they're just incompletions. So we got to play the ball down the field better.
Yeah, I mean, and obviously if you get the continued pass rush, whether you got on Saturday, if Georgia remains as stout against the run as it was, and I think that Kirby Smart correctly said, the sort of untold story from the game on Saturday was the fact that Georgia was kind of unyielding when it comes to the rushing attack. They didn't give up very many rushing yards at all, which allowed everything else that happened defensively to be more successful, I believe. But if you could pair a more, opportunistic secondary to go with that, this could be a Georgia defense that has another level of, another gear, another level of play in it. But to me, the overall bottom line is this, is that I think the Georgia defense entered the chat on Saturday night in a way that it has not all year long. And when you think about the overall profile of what Georgia could be as it tries to remain in the Culture Bowl playoff chase and pursue another national championship, possibly being led a little bit more by the defense, all of a sudden that seems a lot more possible now than maybe it did a couple of weeks ago. My name's Brandon Adams, and this is DawgNation Daily, daily podcast for Georgia Bulldogs fans, presented today by Merriweather and Tharp. Happy to have you with us. Video 10 a.m., that's when we're live, but anybody else can watch it anytime they want to, anytime after the fact, kind of on demand, if you will. Radio noon, Athens Sports Radio 960 The Ref, podcast wherever you find them, including the world-famous DawgNation.com. Just happy that you're here. So thankful to our friends at Merriweather and Tharp who've made it all possible for you there as well. This is our 10th year of doing DawgNation Daily, and one of the things I'm so proud of over the course of that time in doing our show, how many of our great sponsors have been with us for, almost the entire run. Not quite the entire run, but almost the entire run. Merriweather and Tharp has been with us for years and years and years. And I've been telling their story for a long time about the work that they do for people during one of the most challenging situations you may find yourself in, a divorce process, a divorce situation. And for a long time, as we've told that story, that's Merriweather and Tharp and their great attorneys doing that for people in the Atlanta area. And that's kind of where they became famous, and that's the people they served in the Atlanta area. And yet, after we've kind of, obviously our message goes statewide here, people kind of outside Atlanta hearing about us talking about what Merriweather and Tharp can do from a standpoint of people who kind of find themselves in a very challenging divorce situation, people outside the Atlanta area. I'm talking about in Athens or Savannah or Carrollton or Peachtree City, I guess. All these, other folks were saying, listen, there's a need for a Merriweather and Tharp office in our community too. And now we're seeing that spread and grow. And really statewide, there are Merriweather and Tharp offices opening up and Merriweather and Tharp attorneys working in these communities and, handling those situations for those folks. And I love to see that. Obviously no one loves divorce, but for people who do find themselves in a challenging divorce situation, I love the fact that there are people out there that want to help make that easier. And one of the things we really believe in is making the next season of your life as successful and happy and enjoyable as it can possibly be. That's what Meriwether and Tharp is all about. Not just for people in Atlanta now, but people all across the state too. So I want you to find their website. It's GeorgiaDivorceTeam.com. That's GeorgiaDivorceTeam.com. Meriwether and Tharp is your source for Georgia Divorce. And by the way, our friends Bob and Ashley Tharp, obviously Bob from Meriwether and Tharp, they were in Austin last weekend. I didn't get a chance to see them face-to-face, but they were there, and they were having a good time. They're good Georgia fans. They're big supporters of UGA, but obviously really, really impactful in your time of need if you find yourself in a divorce situation. Okay, so we got Terrence Edwards here coming up in a moment. Terrence was named this week as an SEC legend. Such a cool honor, such an amazing designation to be given to anybody. So we'll celebrate that with Terrence here coming up in just a bit. Also, before we're done today, we'll talk about a great interaction. We'll tell you more about this. We'll show it to you. Get a chance to hear from the guy involved. David Pollack, the terrific Georgia pass rusher, and we just talked about the Georgia defense a moment ago. One of the guys who led the way on all of that was Jalon Walker. If you're watching a video, the interaction that Walker and Pollack had last night during the Chick-fil-A Dawg Bowl with Coach Richt, man, this was such a cool thing to see. We also had a great interview with David Pollack. He'll talk about Georgia football and Coach Richt, all of that here coming up in just a little bit. But prior to any of that, though, I want to go around the doghouse here today, too. Now, we just heard the version of Kirby Smart that we always get to hear. You know, challenging the defense, never satisfied with anything, pretty hard-edged. You know, that's the Kirby that's on display for the world to see. But I tell you, one of the things I love about last night is it's the version of Kirby and Kirby's players in many respects that we don't very frequently get to see, but I believe is just as much of an authentic part of his personality as any of the others. Y'all, when I tell you, when it comes to this event, and man, I thought the Chick-fil-A Dawg Bowl last night was so good, obviously raising a ton of money for a great cause, but also just fun. And here's what I'm here to tell you. You know, Kirby, and you see Mary Beth right there on your screen, like the Smart family was as involved in this as anything. I mean, they were like in the mix with this. Kirby's just like hanging out. Like, I mean, this is a guy whose time is so precious, and obviously he's as scheduled out as anybody is on anything. But on a night like this, he's just there to be a part of it. And obviously all of that because of the affection that we all have for Coach Richt. You see Warren Brinson back there having fun. Brinson and his team won for the second year in a row. Warren Brinson's a really good bowler. That was cool. You see the championship belts there. This was just such an amazing night. And I had the privilege, rare privilege for me, I don't get a chance to do this very much, to have an interview with Kirby Smart where we talked about what Coach Richt means and the opportunity for these Georgia players to give of their time in support of a good cause and the belief they have that their platform can be used this way. I was proud to get a chance to talk to Kirby Smart about this last night. I'm really honored to be able to showcase this side of Kirby's personality, which we perhaps wouldn't get to see enough. And around the doghouse here today on DawgNation Daily, want to show that to you right now.
Coach, we were talking to your wife a moment ago. I think this is just sort of a cool thing to look out on and see the way the players come together for a night like this. Everywhere you look, everybody's happy and having a good time. What does this mean for you personally?
Well, it means a lot to me because I know what it means to Coach Richt. And I had a grandfather that had Parkinson's, my mom's dad, and it touches me that he still gives back to this community. Obviously, we've got several players that have Crohn's disease. So when you get an opportunity to give back to your community, I think it's incredible to do that. And our players love it. So our players like winning, so they want to wear this belt.
Yeah, we've already shown the belts. They're a very cool thing to see. In the case of Coach Richt, you know, obviously we know the personal health challenge that he's dealing with, but in my personal conversations with him, we've had him on my show and things like that. This is a guy that the best that I can tell is still leading as well as he's ever led, and I think that's a tremendous personal testimony for him, and I'm sure you would agree with that too.
Oh, he's a coach at heart. He's tough. He's got a great family. I mean, look what he's done with this community, Miss Catherine and all his kids. John's a great coach. Coach Richt's just a pillar in the community, and he's meant so much to me in my career. Having worked for him for a year and been around him, you just love the man.
And obviously you talked before, you know, in a joking way, your players want to win. They like the idea of the belt. But the sense that I also get, too, is these guys understand the fame they have. They understand the love they have from the rest of Georgia fans. Leveraging that for a good cause here tonight, that's something that they also seem to have a real sense of the impact they can make on the community by doing something like that.
Oh, yeah, it's a platform for them. They have a platform. They want to give back. They like bowling, and they know it means a lot. And we've had several coaches stand up in front of our team and explain what Coach Richt meant to them. And when Coach Hartley, Coach Bobo, Coach Searles, Jarvis Jones, Jonas Jennings all talk about Coach Richt and what he's done for this community, all these kids want to get back to that.
Well, you're the ultimate scout. Nobody has a better game plan than you. How have you scouted these guys? Who do you expect to bowl the best tonight?
Well, I saw Warren Brinson with a belt, so that tells me that he's a former winner or he's a fraud. I don't know which one. But he must be the best bowler. There's a lot of them talking noise back and forth.
We were joking earlier. I don't know about the form, but these guys throw it hard, though.
Oh, God. The pins are not safe. A couple of them last year, I mean, they'll crack the pins now.
Well, listen, Coach, we appreciate your time. I know it's a busy week. Thank you so much for being here.
Appreciate it. Nice shirt. We love it.
I appreciate that.
See, some of y'all were giving me a hard time about the bowling shirt yesterday. Kirby Smart said he liked it. So there you go. If Kirby likes it, then that's plenty good for me. But I loved all that last night. We're going to do some more fun stuff on this before we're done. You know, David Pollack, with so many great interviews, getting a chance to talk to Coach Richt last night too. Just please go to the DawgNation YouTube page. You can watch the full video, but also go to ricksdawgbowl.com and you can give as we raise money for the Isaacson Center at UGA, Parkinson's disease research, Crohn's disease research. We will really pursue a goal of $800,000. And it's, man, very, very fun to have Kirby Smart on the show last night and be able to play that for you here today. What a great thing that was. Now, speaking of great things here on DawgNation Daily, presented by Merriweather and Tharp, tremendous honor given to our good friend Terrence Edwards. We're going to celebrate that with him. We'll also talk about a big week for the Dogs here, too. So let's keep the fun going here today. It's Terrence Edwards on DawgNation Daily, presented by Merriweather and Tharp.
From Athens and across the SEC or wherever the recruiting trail may lead, here's a DawgNation.com insider.
Glad to have Terrence Edwards on the show, busy as he is, but what a great week to talk to him. We'll celebrate in a few minutes a really cool honor that I think is obviously well-deserved and we're really proud of. But Terrence, it's also a big week for UGA, too, coming off a gigantic win against Texas. And, you know, I know it's the kind of thing that, you know, we heard all kinds of doubters and people kind of wondering what Georgia could still be about. Boy, they sent a big message with that win against Texas last week. What were your thoughts about the overall win, Georgia going on the road and beating the number one team in the country?
Yes, I really thought that this defense, was the player of the game, per se. They was flying around. They came in with an attitude and I think a chip on their shoulder because nobody believed that Georgia could win. Nobody believed that this defense could dominate a Sarkisian-type offense with Quinn Ewers is one of the top guys in the draft with the receivers and a first-round projected offensive left tackle. No one believed that this defense can do what we did, and that was very good to see. I just think that Kirby really got the guys to focus in on their assignments and go play Georgia football. It was good to see. The offense made enough plays to put up 30 points. So that was for a former Dog, that was a night to see.
No doubt. It's a great thing. And it's also one of those things too, Terrence, where think about before it would have been almost like unimaginable that Georgia would be playing at Texas, especially as an SEC opponent. I mean, the sport has really changed. And I think you're probably like me. I'm not quite so sure that all of these changes are changes for the better. But I tell you, week to week, these games are entertaining. And the schedule that Georgia's playing, as tough and challenging as it is, boy, it's a ton of fun, too. I mean, you felt like you were at a big environment on Saturday. You felt like Georgia was playing on a big stage. And, sport's in kind of a weird place right now, but it's still really fun to watch these games. I'm just going to tell you the truth on that.
Right. With the ground roots to everything, football is football. And that's why you come to Georgia, to be able to play these type games. So I think Kirby's recruiting guys that just love football and love to compete. If you don't love football and love to compete, you can't last at Georgia because you're going to go into these environments like Texas, like Notre Dame a few years ago, the Rose Bowl. So Georgia has played in some really big games. Kirby has coached in some really big games. So this is what you come to Georgia to do, to play these type games and see what type player you are. If you believe that you are that type player, that you're the best of the best, go to Georgia, go to these type environments and see if you're better than the next man lined up across from you.
So I've had 1,000 people ask me this week, including people in our comment section right now, what does Terrence think about the drops? What does Terrence think about the drops? What's going on with the Georgia wide receivers? So I'm glad we have you on today because I do think that, in the midst of a great game for Georgia, and it is this kind of lingering issue where, Georgia's having a hard time catching the ball. Kirby kind of joked about it on Saturday. It's easy to joke about that when you win, but obviously I know the players themselves want to improve in this area, and clearly, Georgia, to get where it wants to go as a team, got to kind of, continue that improvement too. As a wide receiver coach, as a great former wide receiver yourself, what do you make about issues catching the football for Georgia right now?
Yes, I tweeted this. It's a lot we're trying to put the cart before the horse and run with the football, trying to see where defenders are, trying to absorb hits. At the end of the day, you have to catch the football. We have all, if you played this position long enough, we have all had our fair share of drop passes. But what I find out the root of the issue, that's when I train and coach. Do you have bad eyes? Or your hand placement is wrong? So the guys just have to really go back and look at the film and understand what they have to do to catch the football. What was missing? There's a missing component when there's a drop. It could be bad eyes, your eyes, location, hand placement. It could be a number of things. They just have to go watch the film, figure it out. And it also could be confidence. At the end of the day, when you lack confidence, you try to catch the ball in a way that you're not normal. You're trying to make it easy. That's body catching. Not catching in the way that you feel comfortable getting yards after catch. So there's a number of reasons why we can have drops. Only that player can figure it out and fix what is going on with that individual person. Yes, you could go and catch 1,000 passes, but it's not the same when a guy's beaming down on you and you got to catch it. So it's up to that individual player to go and figure out why he's dropping the football at a high rate and fix it himself.
Is there any part of that can be diagnosed just from watching? It certainly makes sense that, okay, in the moment with the player himself, he's going to know more about, is this my eyes? Am I not seeing it? Are my hands not in the right spot? Or am I, just kind of succumbing to the pressure of the moment? Individually, each player may have, the best insight on that. But for those of us either watching from the stands or watching on TV, how much of this can be kind of diagnosed from a third-person perspective?
So, I don't know if you haven't really – we can all speculate and assume why someone drops the football, and we all say, just catch the football, that's your job. And it's a little bit more than that. The Dylan Bell drop, that is – he doesn't drop passes. Mm-hmm. And from what I saw, his eyes turned away before the ball reached his hands. So that is a drop where he just has what I call finish the catch. There's 3 components of finishing the catch. First, you got to locate the football. Secondly, the ball got to hit your hands. And thirdly, your hands and eyes have to connect together to catch the football. One can't go before the other. And I believe on that play, his eyes, because the ball was slightly behind him, he didn't finish the catch all the way through. And he turned his head a little bit before the ball reached his hand trying to run because he's such a great athlete and he does have great hands. So, I could look at it because I've done it so much, and that's just one example of what I thought why he dropped the football. I think Humphreys was the same way, where his eyes just turned before his hands completed the catch, and he tried to run up the field before he secured the football.
And the other thing, too, is, and I don't have obviously experience at this level, but we all have some sort of sporting experience, whether it be playing ourselves or coaching our kids. It seems like there's always this part of this that sort of feels contagious. And if you ever, coach your son's baseball team, it's like if somebody makes an error now, 5 people are about to make an error because that contagion sort of spreads, across the team. Sometimes it feels that way. Even in the SEC level, it's like a couple of drops. All of a sudden now, everybody seems to get a little bit more nervous out there, or sometimes this kind of becomes sort of a reoccurring problem. As crazy as it sounds, sometimes it seems like that's true in sports, doesn't it?
And I can't answer why. There's times where you can see in a basketball game where a team goes 15 straight missed 3-pointers.
Yes.
Why is everybody missing 3-pointers? So I don't know. I can't tell you why it happens that way. It is literally like a cancer. It spreads through everybody, and I don't know why. Why one person drop hurts the next player. I don't know why, but everyone just has to kind of figure out why they dropped that singular pass and get back to the basics.
Yeah, sports is a weird thing. It's probably why we spend our whole life, being a part of it, just because it's so fascinating. But it is really weird how stuff like that just sort of happens. On a much happier note, Terrence, we got the news yesterday, or whatever day it was that came out this week. we were so thrilled. So every year for the SEC championship, one of the traditions for the league is each school has a former player that's honored, or a former coach that's honored as an SEC legend. And this year for Georgia, Terrence Edwards is going to be honored as an SEC legend at this year's SEC championship game. It's obviously a well-deserved honor, but we were thrilled about it for you, Terrence. And I guess I'm kind of curious, what was it like sort of hearing your name mentioned as an SEC legend?
Yes, I got the news actually a couple months ago, so I've known for a while and kept it to my chest from everybody, and just wanted to be a surprise for everybody. And when I got the call, I was happy just to be acknowledged for the hard work that I've put in throughout my time, and I've acknowledged a few people on my social media. My high school basketball coach, Rick Tomlin, my head football coach, Coach Jim Dinah, who offered me a football scholarship to come to the University of Georgia. And I thank Coach Rick for pushing me to a level that I didn't know I had. So I'm all thankful for all those guys and the thousands of teammates that I've had throughout my time at Georgia that actually helped me as well. I didn't do it on my own. So I'm thrilled for myself and my family. Now the Edwards have 2 SEC legends in the house.
That's right. That's a cool thing. And obviously you're a football coach now, just like your brother is, and you're trying to get the attention of those players and make sure everybody's listening to you. Terrence Edwards, Coach Edwards, SEC legend, maybe makes that a little easier, right?
Yes, they were all happy for me once they saw the news on social media, and they understand the level of achievements that I've had throughout my football career, and they're excited that their coach can have all this knowledge and background that be able to give them the same knowledge that I've received as well.
So I got to ask you about this before we let you go, and it's just kind of the nature of the beast. But, some people were kind of noticing on this list of SEC legends, you've got Barry Switzer from Oklahoma, who've never been in the SEC. Vince Young, an all-time great player, but obviously a very different version of Texas football. What do you make of the fact that when you go in as an SEC legend, you're going to have a couple of guys like Coach Switzer and Vince Young, who are certainly, somewhat strangers to the SEC, even if they are greats in their own category?
Yes, it was side-eye first. But then I look like I get opportunity to be on the same stage with Coach Switzer and a legend like Vince Young. I'm happy to be able to meet them and take a picture with them.
Yeah, because one way or another, even if Vince Young wasn't exactly an SEC legend, his performance in that game against USC, and I know you remember that well, you can still put that in the category of one of the greatest games of all time.
Oh, most definitely. I think that may be the best performance in a national championship game that we have ever seen. The way he beat the I guess one of the greatest teams ever in USC, and that fourth quarter run that he had on the sideline to seal the victory that was one of the best performances I've ever seen. So get opportunity to meet him, take a picture with him, and be in the same vicinity as a guy like him. I'm excited for myself and for all the SEC legends.
So you mentioned your social medias, but say goodbye to you. Terrence Edwards, Wide Receiver Academy. People can always find you online there. I know it's a busy time. I'm not sure how much individual coaching is going on, but obviously that work will be happening as you head towards the winter here a little bit. I know that. So for people who want to find more of you, Terrence Edwards Wide Receiver Academy, how can they do that, Terrence?
Yes, you can find me on all social media platforms at Terrence Edwards Wide Receiver Academy.
Well, listen, I know how busy you are. You got a lot going on these days. The fact that you'd pop on here and celebrate this great honor with us means a lot to me. I appreciate that, and we'll look forward to getting a chance to talk to you soon.
Thank you.
Let's take a look around the rest of the league. This is SEC Through.
Yeah, I'm going to tell you something right now. Now, the chances of this happening are exactly 0. But can you imagine if your name was Brandon Adams, SEC legend in capital letters? Like, that's great. That's really good. Well-deserved for Terrence. Totally undeserving for me. But listen, it'd still be kind of nice to think about that. I wonder if they'll ever have like a podcast wing for the SEC legends. Something tells me probably not. But if they did, we would consider ourselves eligible to be honored. Anyway, let's get ready to go cruise around the SEC, courtesy of Royal Caribbean. And by the way, before we're done, speaking of SEC legends, another one, David Pollack, caught up with him last night. David had some great moments as a part of the Chick-fil-A Dawg Bowl. We'll have some fun with this here before we're done. On just a great day for our show, looking back on a great night and enjoying some happy times for some of our own there with Terrence Edwards. And I tell you, last night, it's kind of funny. It's like one of the things that people know about me more than anything else is the DawgNation Cruise. It's really kind of funny. And so I end up talking to people about the cruise a lot last night, and people are like, so BA, tell me about this DawgNation cruise. And I go right into the same spiel. It's like I'm a little bit like a robot. You sort of wind me up, and I'll just kind of go into my my little cadence here. But I do truly believe, as I was telling folks all last night at the Chick-fil-A Dawg Bowl, that if you want to have a chance to have a great, just unbelievably fun time, the DawgNation cruise coming up in this upcoming April, it's something you absolutely want to be a part of. And it's really the ship that we sail on that's as much of a destination as almost anything. We talk about Perfect Day, Coco Cay all the time, but my goodness, when you think about the great experience that you have on board Utopia of the Seas, the fact that really we get a chance this year to have our DawgNation cruise on the newest of the Royal Caribbean cruise ships, that to me is one of the most awesome things of all. And I will tell you that behind the scenes for many months, or at least a few months, there was this kind of, are we going to be able to do this? Because the ship is incredibly popular and the space on these sailings incredibly limited. And obviously we take hundreds of people on board a DawgNation cruise. So it was a question of, are we going to be able to find the space on board Utopia of the Seas to be able to do our cruise on this new Royal Caribbean cruise ship? It's sailing out of Port Canaveral. It's sort of perfect for us, but it's also perfect for a lot of other people too, incredibly in demand. And it fell into place, it worked out, and so now I'm here to tell you it's going to be one of the best experiences you can ever have. So give Jessica Slater a call, 770-718-9147. That's 770-718-9147. You can also email her, jslater@dreamvacations.com. She'll get you booked up. She'll get you ready to go for that DawgNation cruise coming up in April of 2025. Sailing out of Port Canaveral, going to Nassau in the Bahamas, Perfect Day, Coco Cay, specially themed DawgNation events. It is all going down. Okay, so there is something we haven't really talked about yet this week that is pretty wild. And I can only imagine if this happened around here. But the point is that obviously Tennessee beat Alabama again on Saturday. And in both of the Tennessee wins against Alabama in the Josh Heupel era, Neyland Stadium, to its credit, has been a pretty big factor in those games. Very loud crowd, very hostile environment. And listen, we don't have a problem giving credit where credit's due that, Tennessee's a tough place to play. Now, for whatever reason, it's never tough for Georgia. They seem to blow out the Vols every time they go there. But for other teams, Tennessee's a pretty tough place to play. And against other opponents, the Tennessee crowd seemingly very good at kind of creating an opportunity that makes a win for the Vols more likely. We're more than happy to give, credit for that. And Alabama obviously is kind of falling up. I mean, I don't want to overstate this, but boy, the vibe around Alabama right now is just weird. You had Ryan Williams painting his fingernails orange, which I think a lot of folks thought was pretty strange. I have to admit, I probably do too. You got all the stuff involving, Kalen DeBoer, who just, every single week kind of reminds you he is a very, very different coach than what Nick Saban was. And that difference is not making Alabama better at the moment, it seems. But you also had this kind of an odd messaging coming from Alabama after the game against Tennessee, where their play-by-play broadcaster, Chris Stewart, I guess during the game, was talking about the Tennessee crowd, how hostile it is. And then he said that, and they're also pumping in crowd noise as well. Like, that's a fairly serious accusation. That's the kind of thing that the Falcons, you remember this a few years ago? The Falcons got pretty heavily penalized for that, like pumping in crowd noise, amplifying the sound of the crowd noise. That was a pretty serious thing for the Atlanta Falcons. And to accuse Tennessee of doing that's pretty serious too. Now, Tennessee has grabbed a hold of this, like you better believe. Josh Heupel's fanning the flames with this. Tennessee's essentially taking this as a badge of honor. That if our crowd is so loud that you think it's artificially enhanced, that just goes to show you how great our crowd is. That's what Tennessee's sort of treating this as, and I can understand why they mind. In the case of Alabama, though, this just looks like the most petty, excuse making that you'll ever see. Maybe akin to blaming everything on injured wide receivers, but nonetheless, it just seems like a real PR misstep on the part of Stewart. Now, Stewart, their play-by-play guy, has gone on some interviews since then, and he's tried to clarify his remarks, obviously, and I'm going to hold myself in the same, to the same standard here, that if you are a professional communicator, communication is your responsibility. That, obviously, if I speak for an hour, speak for, hours on end, I'm sure some of you probably think, then, of course, I could be prone to an error. And, of course, I could be prone to something that, maybe comes out the wrong way, makes people mad. Honestly, sometimes that does happen. But the responsibility is always with me because, to use the line from the great movie, this is the business I've chosen, right? When you're the communicator, you've got the responsibility to communicate the message you intended to communicate. Well, Stewart says that he didn't mean to say that they're pumping in crowd noise. I think what he actually meant is they are amplifying the third down cheers with music too, which, by the way, if you want to think about like the Georgia game day environment, what people have talked about, how do you enhance that? A little bit more of some of the loudspeaker music to go along with third down. They probably do need maybe a little bit more of that. I do think that's one of the things that Tennessee's probably doing pretty well. I think that's what Stewart meant. But he's created a whole big old mess here. Just kind of saying the wrong thing, having the thing that he said come out the wrong way. Tennessee's using this as fuel to kind of prove how down bad Alabama is. And Alabama looks like, they kind of unforced error here by, stirring up some sort of controversy that didn't need to be stirred up. Like, I don't know that Kalen DeBoer even has his wits about him right now enough to even know what to think about this. I can tell you this. If I ever came on the show and said, so-and-so team that Georgia just played, they were pumping in crowd noise, making some sort of odd accusation like that, I can promise you this, Georgia would be furious. Like, Kirby would probably be furious. And if Kalen DeBoer's got his, wits about him, I'm guessing he's probably pretty furious about that too, because Stewart has kind of created a problem for Alabama that didn't need to exist. So this is sort of one of those only in the SEC type controversies where the play-by-play guy is criticizing or accusing Tennessee, at least accidentally maybe, of pumping in crowd noise, and Tennessee seems to be soaking that up. So third Saturday in October as a rivalry seems to be as intense as ever. Speaking of Alabama, it doesn't, at least theoretically, get much easier for them. They do play this Saturday against Missouri. Now, this is obviously a game that is not as intense as it once expected to be. Missouri's a preseason top 10 team. They're clearly nowhere near, that good. They are still ranked. But problems for Missouri here is that quarterback Brady Cook is now listed as doubtful for this game. Now, the truth is, one of the reasons why Missouri has not been as good this year as some people thought they would be is because really Brady Cook, who I thought last year took a big stride towards solidifying himself as kind of a major SEC quarterback, boy, he just seemingly hasn't been the same guy here this year. Even with Luther Burden to throw to, has not really been that same guy. And I think people kind of forget how much like hype was sort of building around Cook. Hype may seem like a weird word to use, but if you want to go back to, and a lot's been made of like Carson Beck and the Lamborghini and all the stuff that Beck has had going for him. But and I don't honestly put a lot of stock in this, but if you care about like the on-3 NIL valuations at all, if you care about that whatsoever, Beck was like a top 10 NIL guy, prior to the start of the year. Brady Cook was like one spot below him that at least according to On3, to the extent that's, not a work of fiction, at least according to On3, Brady Cook had a really high NIL value. This was a pretty vaunted quarterback before the season began. Not really had that kind of year, and now maybe on Saturday in Tuscaloosa, we may be getting ready to find out what else Missouri has at the quarterback position. And maybe for Alabama, listen, right now, just a win against anybody is what they probably need. Still in the playoff chase, but would certainly think back against the wall. And listen, of course, they beat Georgia. It stinks. I'm tired of that. But it is true. They beat Georgia, so you got to give them their credit for that if you're a UGA fan. But if you're making evaluations about what the rest of the season looks like going forward, really since about the midway point of the second quarter against Georgia, for the remainder of that game and everything that's happened since then, we really haven't seen Alabama look like a very good football team since then. So this Saturday against a banged-up Missouri team may be a chance for Alabama to perhaps get it going just a bit. Then how about last night? Here in our great state, Kennesaw State pulling off one of the biggest upsets of the season, knocking off the Liberty Flames. And this is going to be interesting from a couple of fronts. First of all, Kennesaw State now in FBS. Some of the analytics folks will tell you they were on pace to have, and probably may still be, but on pace to have maybe arguably, and this is going to sound crazy, but like the worst offense of all time, that they were, at least analytically kind of in that conversation for as bad an offense as any team's ever had. So the idea that Kennesaw State would be beating a team like Liberty, this wasn't, I don't think, on anybody's radar here. Obviously, Liberty was a, New Year's Six Bowl team last year, a team kind of in contention for that kind of group of 5 playoff spot. But playing in Conference USA, they obviously don't have, anything in the way of schedule strength. And so I'm thinking that for a lot of the country last night, Liberty losing is going to be treated as a good thing, because all of a sudden now it kind of clears the path without the potential undefeated group of 5 team. It probably clears the path a little bit more for whether it's Army or Navy, which you got to consider them as a realistic possibility right now. They're arguably the best 2 teams in the American Athletic Conference. They may play in consecutive weeks to end the season. You at least have to consider the possibility that one of those 2 teams, they're both ranked right now, they could make the college football playoff as the group of 5 representative. It may be more likely, though, that it comes down to like a Boise State UNLV winner from the Mountain West as the actual top group of 5 team. Either way, I think for most people, the Liberty loss probably clears the path for what I think a lot of people probably view as a better group of 5 team to eventually make the playoff. And obviously, speaking of the Flames, their coach, Jamie Chadwell, his former quarterback at Coastal Carolina, who is now at NC State, are you following me on this? Grayson McCall also announced that he's retiring from football after what he says is too many concussions. A little bit reminiscent of what happened with JT Daniels, I guess. But McCall was, you go back a couple of years ago when he was at Coastal Carolina, what a thing he was to watch. But obviously not quite finding that success at NC State, and now his football career coming to an end perhaps sooner than he wanted to. But a big upset last night, though. Kennesaw State knocks off Liberty, which kind of shakes up the playoff picture for that group of 5 team looking to probably make it in as a 12 seed. We'll make that cruising around the SEC courtesy of Royal Caribbean. So here on DawgNation Daily, presented by Merriweather and Tharp, I want to get back to the Georgia Bulldogs here. And I want to get back into it with what we had a great opportunity to see last night. So the Chick-fil-A Dawg Bowl, as we told you, raising money for Parkinson's disease research, Crohn's disease research, all benefiting the Isaacson Center at UGA, named after former U.S. Senator from Georgia, Johnny Isaacson, who passed away after a battle with Parkinson's disease a couple of years ago. So great night last night, raising money for this great cause. Coach Richt was so much fun, right in the center of all the action. It was great to see. And when you're a fly on the wall in moments like this, and if you're not watching video, I apologize, you're not going to be able to see this, but I'll try to describe it the best I can. And it may be worth checking out today's video show for your chance to see that, or some of our DawgNation social media. I know Instagram had this too. So Jalon Walker, what a great night Walker had against Texas on Saturday. 3 sacks, 7 tackles, all in the first half. An amazing night, kind of helping lead the way for Georgia against Texas. A really accomplished pass rusher. But you also had the situation where Walker, was interacting with David Pollack. Now, David Pollack, going back to the early 2000s, a 2002 SEC champion, all the way through, Rick's kind of first 4 years at Georgia. Great years for David Pollack, too. Became a first-round pick of the Cincinnati Bengals. Many of you realize this. Obviously, prior to becoming a broadcaster, it was actually an NFL career cut short by a neck injury. David broke his neck. That ended his NFL career sooner than, obviously, it would have. Really a sad, tragic situation. From that, though, David has become a great broadcaster and a terrific guy. And I think we have the video. Can we show the video here of Pollack and Jalon Walker interacting? So if you're watching video, you see this. David just kind of showing some of his pass rushing tricks and techniques to Jalon Walker. They're having a great conversation. And, Jalon's a pretty, sharp student of the game in his own right. This is one of the things, when you put a bunch of Georgia football guys in one room, you sort of never know what's going to happen. And to see Pollack and Walker interacting like this is just great. And obviously, David's as fired up about the game as he ever was, and Jalon's a terrific student of the game in his own right. Our Kaylee Manziel had a chance to catch up with David Pollack last night about this moment. Before I play you my interview with David, let me let you hear David talking with Kaylee about that chance to have kind of a fun personal interaction with one of the guys who played as well as anyone could against Texas on Saturday, Jalon Walker. This is what David Pollack said about that.
You can't talk about the performance at Georgia and Texas without talking about Jalon Walker as a former linebacker yourself. What do you make of him as a player, and now getting to see him and know him as a person here on the bowling lane?
Well, I was talking trash because, you got a lot more sacks to get up. You got to get your weight up if you want to get to the record. But no, just an awesome young man. I didn't know him really well until today. but a good dude. But just means a lot to this team. They just wrecked Texas, and that was really fun. So I think he'll determine a lot of the success of Georgia moving forward.
Isn't that great? And I mean, I've had a couple of small interactions with Jalon Walker over the years, and I mean, I'm really impressed by him too. I think he's a terrific guy. Really, comes across that way, and obviously, that's the impression everybody seems to have. And fun to see David, who, by the way, if you're listening radio podcast, his hat says Georgia till I die. Obviously, David is as UGA as it gets, and you love seeing him in an event like this last night, interacting like that with Jalon Walker, and as he says, talking a little trash about the sack record. But Jalon, based on the way that he played on Saturday, could certainly have a lot more sacks to compile as a part of this Georgia football roster. Now, speaking of David Pollack, I also had my own chance to talk to David last night as part of our live broadcast. So as we kind of celebrate a night that was, raising money in cooperation with Coach Mark Richt, let's hear David Pollack on that and his own thoughts, in addition on Georgia and its win against Texas. Here's a part of DawgNation Daily presented by Merriweather and Tharp.
I'm hoping this is a bowling shirt, right?
It is a bowling shirt.
Okay, thank God.
Do you think it looks okay?
I could see you wearing that normally, so I was just making sure we did.
I mean, listen, if I had a physique like yours, I'd wear whatever, but since I don't quite have that, I'm going to have the loose-fitting clothes.
Just sort of shirtless.
Oh, yeah, listen, I don't know about that. But, David, we're glad to have you here tonight, and I know how much Coach Richt means to you. How much fun is it to be a part of something like this?
If Coach Richt was doing this in the Middle East, I'd be there.
Yeah, absolutely.
Doesn't matter where it is. I know what's in his heart, and I just support everything about him. And so, and this was really fun last year. Like, we had a blast. So good to be back.
And don't you love the fact that, I mean, you know him personally. You obviously interacted with him during your Georgia career. But the sense that I get is that so many of the people that are watching us right now, they kind of feel the same way. They don't have the same personal interactions with him you do, but they were led by his obviously his influence and his leadership and his spirit. They recognize that. They know this man is the real deal of all real deals. And I just think that they're as willing to do whatever as you are, even though your personal relationship is obviously much deeper than many of theirs would be.
It's easy to get behind people that live their way in a life that you respect. Like Coach Richt's always handled himself and everyone else with such respect and kindness, and so I think that you can feel it. It's genuine. He was my spiritual dad when I got to college, and it was fantastic of what I got to learn of how he handled people, how he handled the mob of people, because Georgia fans love their guys and show so much support. And as an 18-year-old, you're like, holy cow, like what's going on? And you're drinking out of a fire hose, and he's like, man, just love on people, be right, do the right things. And so I think that's why. It makes it easy to relate to a guy that's continued to live his life like that.
I think what I was influenced by, and I know you got a lot you want to do tonight, so I'll be respectful of your time, but I think what I was influenced by, we know how intense the SEC is. We also know that Coach Richt is as competitive as anybody, but he found a way to be competitive and win a bunch of games. You guys obviously won an SEC championship and a whole lot of wins. He found a way to be competitive while also reminding us all about what truly matters in life. He found a way to do both of those things, still does even to this day, and I think that's probably the thing about Coach Richt I've been influenced by the most, is the fact that he never lost sight, never does lose sight of what matters most, even though obviously we live in a world in which the SEC football down here is treated as so important. He always reminded us of what was truly important.
Well, I think that you've always been told a coach has to be this way. And what you saw in the past was dictators. And a lot of times more the first part of that word than the tater part. And so I think when you see him, he's led with love. And where did he get it from? Bobby Bowden. Bobby did that way. He learned that way. Dabo leads that way. And it doesn't have to be just, I'm a jerk, I'm in your face, I'm this. You can lead with love. And he did a good job of that. And everyone feels it. And that's why he's been so successful.
All right, let me squeeze one in before we go.
Squeeze away.
How much did you like what you saw on Saturday?
Well, I knew it was coming. And I thought Georgia would win the football game, because when you back a wounded animal in the corner and you tell them they can't do something and they're prideful and they're a good team, they're going to come out swinging. And I thought we came out swinging. Now listen, Brinson being healthy makes a difference. Michael being healthy makes a difference. All that mattered. But I think the energy, the tenacity, the fight was really, really impressive. So nice bounce back, reestablishing yourself. Now you got two top 10 wins. Impressive wins from teams that aren't going anywhere. So that was a big statement to make the playoff. You got some more tough games. Ole Miss is still really good. They can score points. Tennessee, back-to-back weeks going to Ole Miss, at home for Tennessee. So a lot of season left, and the offense has to grow and get better, because they were put in every position to succeed and end that game in the first half. but they still struggled, and so they're still going to have to grow and get better. But that defensive front seven, that's what I'm talking about.
I love you, David. I appreciate you. Thank you for being here.
Appreciate you, brother.
So great stuff, David Pollack, last night, both celebrating Coach Richt and what he still means to so many of us, and obviously also celebration of Georgia and a win against Texas, which is a pretty fun conversation to have as well. Before we wrap up today, let me also give a shout out to our friends at Jittery Joe's. Think about, great times in Athens. Obviously, for many people, that includes a cup of coffee from Jittery Joe's. If it doesn't mean that for you, then it should. You need to check out Jittery Joe's today. And the cool thing is you can check this out wherever you are, because in addition to the great coffee shops, the great coffee right there in the Athens area, they're also right now offering those commemorative cans celebrating some of the best moments in Georgia football history, including the national championships. And you can get your chance to get those right now, too. This is delicious coffee. It's been voted Athens' best coffee shop 14 years in a row. You love that. And it's been locally owned and roasted right there in the Athens area for 30 years. I love Jittery Joe's. It's a great place to visit, great place to go. And you can get a really great offer from Jittery Joe's right now, because when you download the Jittery Joe's app on your mobile device, you're going to get half off your first drink, and you also get a chance to skip the line. And who wouldn't want to do that? So go to jitteryjoes.com for all your coffee needs. It's jitteryjoes.com. Get one of the commemorative cans, get the app, get ready to enjoy some great beverages there in the Athens area. Enjoy Jittery Joe's today. So Golden Shoe today going out to our DawgNation Invasion this past Saturday. And tomorrow we'll do a bunch of shoes. We'll do one of those Friday shoes dumps to give you more of these. But fun on Saturday. Miriam Corbin sent this to me about some horns down all the way here. Miriam Corbin, one of our great Facebook commenters. That's me giving you the double horns down. And our buddy Matt Rukavina, we told you about earlier this week, who was obviously kind enough to bring me the unbelievable bottle of Weller bourbon that I be holding on to and saving for a special occasion. That coming from Matt there too. He's got the horns down going. We had a great time on Saturday. That was so much fun. So we'll give Golden Shoes all around for that. But the lousy, stinking Gators. Boy, I tell you what, the celebration for beating Texas starting to subside. Game faces slowly starting to get back on. Attention's turned to Florida. And as we do, we'll remind you, it's been 1,447 days since Florida's beaten Georgia. The honor and the dignity of the Gatorator Updater. That's what we're defending in Jacksonville next week. We can't wait for that. We'll talk to you more about it tomorrow. It is DawgNation Daily, presented by Merriweather and Tharp. We'll look forward to seeing you then. And on video, time now for the R.S. Andrews Cool Down. R.S. Andrews, you turn to them for your air conditioning, heating, plumbing, electric needs. They show up on time, doing the work that's promised, the price is promised. You can trust them on all of that. Okay, so we'll get your comments here across all platforms. Christy showing a little love for David Pollack. We certainly appreciate that. Let's see what else. Jim K on the running passing balance for Georgia right now. It is interesting how much they're throwing it. And, Kirby Smart's acknowledged that. They are throwing the ball a lot right now. And obviously there were moments on Saturday against Texas where some fans sort of wished, maybe it's the better way to say it, they would throw it, I should say run it a little bit more, but that was not in the offering. So I do think right now this is about as pass happy of a Georgia team as we've seen in quite some time, if not ever. It is true for now. Porter pointing out those lousy, stinking Gators are next. Can't wait for that. Oh, Lord, I can't read Scott Beat's comment. I'm not even sure what that is, but it's certainly very interesting. Let's see what else. Stick D says, going back to 28-0 started for Georgia against Alabama, he says the Georgia defense not lined up correctly on defense. It kept the Bama offense on the field. Yeah, I mean, whatever that was, seemed like a lot has changed for Georgia defensively since then, obviously based on what they showed on Saturday. Seems like that's the case. Foster Moss says, do you think they feed Trevor Etienne a lot for his homecoming against Florida? Well, one way or another, I think after a 3-touchdown performance, whether it be against his former team or not, a lot of Georgia fans would certainly love to see Etienne get the ball more. Perhaps he will. I hope that's the case. Be great. DMart42 seems to agree with you, though. For sure. Stephen Venanzi liked the bowling shirt. I appreciate that. Thank you. And Kirby also complimented that there too. Yeah, Kirby is in a great mood and stuff like this. He's always really really kind about stuff like that. Jerry Dog Fan says you have a cool job interviewing UGA legends. I sure do. And thank you for the kind words. I appreciate that. I'm telling you right now, that means the world to me. I really, really appreciate that. Thank you. Thank you. Indeed. Indeed. Scott P. would say he'd like to see the other team get some flags thrown on it for a change. Yeah, I hear you on that. Brodo Baggins, thank you for the kind words, too. I appreciate that. For sure. Porter and D-Mart also talking about, ETN getting more of those carries. Hope that's the case. SEM Dog says, speaking of Ray Goff, he was the 76th SEC Player of the Year, led Dogs to a 21-0 beatdown of Alabama in Sanford Stadium. Yeah. And finished in the top 10 Heisman voting that year, I believe. As you say, SEC Player of the Year for a team that won the SEC, made the Sugar Bowl. That was back when, Pitt was a machine. Pitt was so good back then. So they didn't beat Pitt in the Sugar Bowl, but they did make the Sugar Bowl. But, yeah, his highlights, kind of a running quarterback, really a very good player. Oh, yeah, DT also pointing out, somebody else said this to me the other day. I got to try to make sure I do this. It sounds better when you say the whole thing longer, 1,447 days. That probably is true. I did try to do that. Johnny Prescott says David is right on the energy and fight comments. I hadn't seen that kind of emotion out of Georgia this year. We need to maintain that through the tough stretch coming up. I would agree with that, too. I would agree with that indeed. Randy Hall checking in to say that Missouri had a perfect storm last year, leading rusher in the SEC, electric player Luther Burden, up-and-coming quarterback, and a very efficient defense. Yeah, and I would say that one of the big differences of Missouri this year is they're just not really playing that level of defense. And, sometimes there are tells before the start of a season, and as we have said before, Blake Baker's decision to leave Missouri to go to LSU, given what, Missouri was expected to be, preseason top 10 team, that was perhaps maybe a little bit of a tell that he wasn't quite believing in Missouri's ability to maybe do all of that. Maybe we all should have been more skeptical. But, yeah, that's a good point. K-Dog says that BA's got a barber, makeup, and clothing manager. Unfortunately, that's not the case. We don't wear the same shirts all the time. Yeah, not the case at all. I feel like my hair is too long right now, too. But thank you for saying that, though. Let's see what else. Let me go back over to Facebook here for a moment. William Camacho says, I may not be a Gator hater, but I'd love nothing more than seeing our Dogs take care of business against those lousy, stinking Gators. I believe that. Taking care of business against Florida, always a very good thing. Craig Jones says, going to miss seeing Georgia play on Saturday. He says it's pickleball and finish staining the fence, I guess. Yeah, that's with no Georgia football, unfortunately, you get kind of dragged back into other things sometimes, yeah. Wayne Kirkland believes that ETN's our best running back since DeAndre Swift. Boy, that's an interesting statement to make. Be fun to see that show up here in the remainder of the games this season. Bill Sanders pointing out it's been 5,768 days since Florida's won a national championship. Yeah, it's crazy how time gets away from you. We've said before that I think that Florida thinks of its national championships as kind of contemporary, taking place in 2008. But, if we subtract 08 from 24, we're talking about 16 years. That means that the current recruits were 2 years old the last time Florida won a national championship. Y'all, that's dangerous for Florida because they're about to be, they're about to be essentially another era. They think of that championship success as contemporary because it's taking place in the 21st century, but the current players have no living memory of it. And there are a lot of people in their 20s, as fans who have really no living memory of that too. Winfred Steinspring says, I'm listening in from St. John's, Florida. I left Highlands, North Carolina on Tuesday to come down and warm up the Jacksonville area for next week. Go Dogs for the world's largest outdoor cocktail party. You talk about jealous. First of all, to be living in Highlands and then traveling to the beach, that's jealous enough. But to already be there getting ready for the cocktail party, I talked to somebody last night, a friend of mine who was at the event, and they're getting ready to go down to St. Simon's. They're about to already be there. I love these people who get to the cocktail party like really early. I love that. One day I hope to be one of those people. I told you before, I'll never stop working, but I hope I'm able to like be a little bit more leisurely about my work. I hope that's the case. I was thinking about this too, and this is a mean thing to say, and I don't mean to say it, so I won't belabor the point. But, we had the broadcaster guy yesterday sort of in a different phase of his career. You kind of go from being on the heights, the mountaintop, and then after a while you're not quite that same level anymore. And I think sometimes that kind of engenders a sense of bitterness in some people. I do hope as I get older, perhaps enter a different phase of my broadcast career, I hope I'm not bitter about it. I hope I'm able to kind of just keep doing the work, kind of happy and lighthearted, enjoying, hopefully traveling to cocktail party, things like that. I hope I don't get to be bitter when I get old. You don't want to do that. Michael Baxter says, what do you think about Milton? I believe this is Milton High School you're talking about. I saw them a couple of weeks ago. I was very impressed. Here's the thing about Milton, that obviously a lot of people sort of think of them because Luke Nickel, the quarterback, is going to Miami, and a guy like C.J. Wiley is going to Florida State. Ethan Barbour, the Georgia commit's having probably their best year offensively, I think. They think of that as kind of a pass-first offense. But if all Milton did was play like hard-edge football, running the ball, playing defense, they'd be among the best teams even if they were just doing that. So I think that Milton obviously is a very, very tough out. Now, 5A is also, they moved from the top classification down to the next classification. 5A is still a really tough classification this year, but there's no doubt the hardest team to beat in the entire state is probably Milton. Drew Thrasher asking about Dalen Everett maybe playing safety. Maybe that's the case. He's saying that, while you got the safeties out, you move Everett over. That gives Robinson a chance to play more. I guess anything's possible. It's important to note, though, that, it wasn't a perfect game overall, I don't believe, but also in that big first half where Georgia was building the lead against Texas that would ultimately prove to be the difference in the game, Dalen Everett probably played some of the best football he's played at Georgia during that moment. Warren Lewis, man after my own heart, says, I'd love to see about 12 sacks against Florida. See that quarterback get up looking through his ear hole. Go Dogs and take him to the woodshed. I love that, Warren. That's good. All right, we're going to bounce out of here a little early today because we have our people that are working on our show. We're also working late last night on the Chick-fil-A Dawg Bowl with Coach Richt, so we're going to be respectful of them today. Let's take a couple more comments before we do get out of here for today, though. Jim Kay says that Everett planted Ewers on that one sack. Man, he blasted him. It's one of the best, isn't that so satisfying when your guy blindside just blasts a quarterback? Just such a satisfying thing to see. And I was kind of comparing this a little bit. I don't know if we did this on the air. I did this off the air with a lot of folks, kind of comparing it to the Eric Stokes hit on Hendon Hooker back in 2021. Do y'all remember this? Was that 21? Yeah, was that 21 or 2019? That may have been 2019. Maybe that's 2019. Gosh. Yeah, that would have been, it's 2019. What am I thinking? 2019. So there you go. That's Everett just absolutely blasting, and then comes up with the football too. So reminiscent of the Stokes hit in 2019. Let me make sure I get that 100% right. That was for sure 2019. I'm now remembering. And in that particular case, that led to a scoop and score. I would put both those kind of cornerback-style blitz into the same category. Garrison Tucker says, what's my go-to cocktail in Gainesville? Well, listen, I like all different kinds of cocktails, as we saw this week for our Golden Shoe, but obviously if I'm thinking cocktail party, I'm also thinking about our friends in the Finished Long Drink. You better know that. Christy says, when does Terry commit? Good story with Jeff and Justice Terry. I think we're still going long haul on this, probably not until December, maybe even sort of the back part of that early signing period. Obviously, Georgia got the hay in the barn when it comes to Elijah Griffin, but Justice Terry going to be waiting for a while longer. Jerry Dogs fan says, has Amelia Island been annexed to UGA yet? Boy, I love to see those flags flying in Amelia Island. Because, to me, I am a believer that, part of the reason that, Ohio State and Michigan historically have had a big rivalry is at one point in time, the two states fought over Toledo. Do y'all know this? About where Toledo should be. Should Toledo be a part of Michigan? Should Toledo be a part of Ohio? Toledo is in Ohio, but Toledo was a little bit of disputed territory for both Ohio, the state, and Michigan, the state. They argued over this territory. Well, I think we ought to do that for Amelia Island. Amelia Island, I mean, it's basically in Georgia. I mean, it's a beautiful beach, wonderful restaurants, terrific place to go. It's basically in Georgia. You're in Florida, but if you go to one of the resorts there, all of the employees of the resorts, they all live in Georgia. A lot of the restaurant workers there that you may interact with, they live in Georgia. I mean, Amelia Island's basically in Georgia. I mean, and as you know, sort of the crow flies by boat. I mean, you're 5 seconds from Georgia land. You know, Cumberland Islands, right? Like you are literally basically in Georgia. So I think that Georgia should conquer Amelia Island, and I think it should take it on behalf of the great state of Georgia. In fact, you know, they play for like the Okefenokee or something like that. Georgia just should take the island. I mean, it's basically in keeping with the Golden Isles as it is. They're all right there in that same little bite, you know, part of the coastal area. So for the Georgia-Florida game, Jerry's right. You got Georgia flags flying all over Amelia Island. That is a conquered territory during Georgia-Florida weekend. But during the regular year, and I know a little thing or two about Amelia Island, during the regular year, that's about as Georgia as it gets. There are Georgia fans there are Georgia fans all over the place, Amelia Island. I believe it should be conquered and claimed on behalf of the great state of Georgia. Yeah, Jim Frank knows this. He says Fernandina Beach, which is kind of like the town that Amelia Island's in, you know, Fernandina and Amelia Island are essentially the same thing. He says Fernandina Beach is dog country, and most of Nassau County is too. Yeah, I mean, I'm just telling you right now, 100%. 100%. Scott Pete says you're not going to like what happens to homeowners insurance if that happens. Yeah, maybe that's the case. Maybe that's the case. We'll let our friends at Georgia Farm Bureau figure all of that out. Cheat Grace laughing at us here. All right, let's do a couple more. Get ready to go. At DawgNation.com. DT says, how about a Dawg Nation invasion of Amelia Island? Listen, I'd be all in favor of that. Johnny Prescott also wants to do one of those riverboat. That's one of the, you know what, we'll do that. We'll go to Cumberland Island, and we'll get on one of those boats coming off of Cumberland, and we'll just invade, just absolutely invade. That'd be great. That'd be great. Coach Hendrick says annex to Camden County. Yeah, Camden County, St. Mary's, just right, and that's basically right there. I mean, like literally, St. Mary's. If you're on 95, like you got the exit for St. Mary's, like the next exit on 95 is Amelia Island. I mean, literally, like Amelia Island could be part of Camden County, and nobody would think twice about it. Nobody would think twice about it. Yeah, JP says that Terry just announced he's committing December the 6th. Yeah, so there you go. That's a big one for Georgia for sure. I'll tell you this, too. I thought about this. There is so much recruiting stuff that we have not talked about at all. And so we're going to do a bunch of recruiting tomorrow. We have not talked about it. We haven't talked about Curtis. We haven't talked about Griffin. We haven't talked about Terry. Latest on him anyway. They offered a quarterback. We got a lot of recruiting stuff to talk about. Matt Goodwin says, what game are we covering on Friday? He says, my son plays for Cherokee Bluff. They've got a huge game coming up at Jefferson on Friday, first ever matchup. Boy, that sounds like a great game. And I love both those programs. Obviously, I grew up near, where Cherokee Bluff is now. There was no Cherokee Bluff when I was growing up. But I love that area of kind of Flowery Branch. Grew up over there. Know a lot of people in the Jefferson area. Love that program. That's a really fun game. We're actually doing our Hall of Fame game on Friday. Decatur is hosting Woodward Academy. Decatur is the high school that Frank Broyles attended. Broyles obviously went on to become, very famous as Arkansas coach, eventually athletic director, and the guy who the Broyles Award is named after. So Broyles, obviously posthumously, was going to be honored as a Georgia High School Football Hall of Famer here this weekend. And Decatur is his alma mater. And so we're going to have Decatur, they're undefeated this year, hosting the state champs of Woodward Academy. So that is going to be our game Friday night on the Peachtree Sports Network. But I'll be watching that Cherokee Bluff Jefferson game very closely. That's a really good one. That's a really good one. Really good one. Okay. Anything else before we go? Back on Facebook one more time. Bill Sanders says, I think that Ryan Puglisi starts next year. It was kind of cool last night. So DawgNation had one of its had a lane at the event last night. We had some great sponsors on hand. Our Faraday, one of our sales folks, was over there too. And bowling with us, it's a little bit like a celebrity golf tournament where you've got like players that are bowling with you. We had Ryan Puglisi and Gunnar Stockton in our lane last night for DawgNation. That was really fun. That was really fun. Okay, let's see what else. Miriam Corbin, she's got some good ideas in here. I love that. Craig Jones loves Amelia Island too. We give a lot of love to Amelia Island today. All right. We're going to get ready to go. Y'all have a good day. Enjoy it. Obviously, make sure you check out later on this evening, DawgNation at Large, 7 p.m. tonight. Connor Riley, Kaylee Manziel, they'll have all kinds of fun. Look back on the Chick-fil-A Dawg Bowl. And Jamie Up says Juju Lewis is going to start for Georgia next year. Somehow I don't quite think that's where we're heading, but funny nonetheless. That's really funny. Y'all check out DawgNation at Large tonight. They'll have a good time with you on that. And then, as I said, tomorrow, a ton of recruiting stuff for us going into a football this weekend, at least as it relates to Georgia. Then maybe I'll see you on TV Saturday night for our Georgia High School Football Hall of Fame induction ceremony. So busy weekend for me. They all are, even with no Georgia football. So y'all enjoy it. We'll talk to you tomorrow. A lot of recruiting. Also, check out R.S. Andrews online, rsandrews.com, for your air conditioning, heating, plumbing, and electric needs. They will show up on time, do the work that's promised, the price that's promised. Plumbing emergencies, if your water heater goes out, in many cases, R.S. Andrews can replace that for you the same day. So please find them online at rsandrews.com. Have a great day, everybody. We'll see you back here tomorrow. DawgNation Daily, presented by Meriwether and Tharp.